Welcome to part 1 of my build of the quarter-scale Jerry Bates Cessna 172 Skyhawk. This video is a slideshow with a voiceover of some pictures I took while building it. Day 1. Airplanes of the type Cessna 172 Skyhawk have a unique place in aviation history. This is the most produced airplane in the world and can arguably be called the most popular plane in history. Ever since it flew for the first time in 1955, the year I was born, more than 44,000 Skyhawks have been made. 68 years later, it is still being manufactured, though they stopped manufacturing for some time. The Cessna 172, that is the best known here in Iceland, is without doubt TF-FRU, owned by Ómar Ragnarsson, a popular reporter on the Icelandic television. The registration FRU, or Fru, actually means wife or Mrs. in Icelandic. Ómar used this plane for a great many years to bring unforgettable stories to the viewers of TV news in Iceland. Cessna 172 is also the most popular plane in Icelandic aviation and has been for decades. About 40 Skyhawks are registered with Icelandic authorities. Its popularity comes mostly from the fact that it is easy to operate and learn to fly. It is also dependable and boasts the lowest number of incidences in private use. She is so easy to fly, she never does anything unexpected, says Ómar. After having flown her for thousands of hours, you start feeling her wings growing from your own body. Pilot and plane become one. Ómar says this plane does not excel in any other way. She does not climb quickly and she is not fast. But when all her good points come together, she becomes the best private airplane in history. As strange as it may seem, there are not very many models available of this particular airplane. Other trainers and private aircraft are much more common, like, for example, the Piper Cub. The Cessna seems to have been left out in the cold. I was looking for a new model to build and discovered that Jerry Bates had recently designed and drawn a quarter-scale example of this subject. I got a copy of the plans from fighter races in England. Jerry does not export outside the continent. And after having studied the plan for a number of days, even weeks, I contacted Slayer or Bel Air kit cutters in England and ordered a short kit and an additional wood pack. It took them about a month to cut the kit and gather the required balsa, and finally this morning I received a message that the package had arrived in Dalvík, in the north of Iceland, where I live. I ripped the packaging apart, and here is my kit on the left and the additional balsa on the right. Then I started the enjoyable task of separating all the parts from the sheets and organizing them into logical piles. This cutting is extremely well done. Not much soot on the parts and everything cut right through, even the 6mm plywood. Day 2. The Cessna 172 has a wingspan of 11 meters. A quarter of this would be 275 centimeters or about 108 inches. I took out the trusty red measuring tape and the plans. The wings on the plans came out at 122 centimeters each, and the center of the fuselage is 29.2 centimeters. And those together, add those together, and you get 273.2 centimeters, as close to quarter scale as you might want to get. Then the question comes up, where did the 2 centimeters go? We'll come to that later. I finished separating the laser cut parts from all the boards and arranging them into logical piles. This actually makes a really impressive pile of parts. Nice alliteration. Then I gathered together everything that makes up the stabilizer and dry fitted it together on top of the plan. This is when I realized where the 2 centimeters of the wing had gone. The plans are not quite full size. Here you can see that with one end rib of the stab in place, the other one is shifted more than a centimeter off. This means I cannot use the plans to build on, but only as a reference. Don't remember who said it. I think it might have been Dave Platt. But I will have to build to the parts, not the plan. I placed the stab trailing edge spar and glued the ribs in their respective slots using CA glue. Then I slotted the leading edge plywood in place. Here I found out that the slot for S2 is not offset as it should be, so I had to widen and offset it. And here are the ribs being placed. The squared building board from Sleck is very helpful here. When I put in the top spar, I noticed that the slots in 2 of the ribs were not correct. I had to widen the slots in S1 and S2. An easy job and quickly done. Here you have the stab ready for the top sheet. This will be done tomorrow. Day 3. I wanted to make the skins for the horizontal stabilizer, so I used a few minutes to go through the 2.5mm balsa I got from Sleck with the short kit and weighed it. The boards, 10 centimeters by 122 centimeters, were all in the 28 to 48 gram range. They have chosen correctly. Then I used the lightest boards to make the skins for the stab. Here the upper skin is being glued to the stab. I used steel blocks, clamps and sandbags to hold it down. The stab ribs have feet that see to it that it comes out level and straight. I assembled the elevators and remembered to include the internal balsa blocks for the hinges and the steering brace. And here the stab and the elevators are being glued, ready for tomorrow. Day 4. The lower skin has now been added to the stab. Now it only needs the leading edge and the tips. And so we turn to the vertical fin. The first thing I noticed is that the aft part of rib V6 is much too short. It lacks about 15 millimeters, so I had to cut a new one. The next thing I discovered was, because I cannot build it on top of the plan, all these things are sort of floating in midair. Nothing can be braced against anything, and I just had to hold each part until the glue grabbed. But when the glue had set, this became a very stiff and straight trellis. It took me a good hour to puzzle everything together. Tomorrow I will add the skins and make up the rudder. Day 5. Rudder and elevators today. I glued the ribs and the leading edge to the right-hand skin of the rudder. Then I sanded down the trailing edge until I reached the 0.3mm pro skin I had laminated to the outside of the balsa skin. When this was dry, I glued the left skin on. The trailing edge of the rudder is now the sharpest I have ever made. 2 0.3mm pro skin skins, and so strong you can use it as a lethal weapon. I'll give you a picture tomorrow. The elevators are now dry and I shaped the ends of them with a balsa plane. I really like planing and sanding things like these. And here some of the hinges have been added. I've not yet opened up the hinge slots completely or formed the leading edge of the elevators. This will come later. Day 6. Last day doing the tail. Here the hinge blocks have been added to the vertical stabilizer or fin. Now the right hand skin can be added. Here's something that took me by surprise. The hinge holes in the trailing edge of the stab and the leading edges of the elevators do not match. To correct this, I drilled a new hole in the stab trailing edge, pumped as much polyurethane glue into it as I could, and then pushed a stick of balsa into it. When the glue has expanded, I can drill a new hole for the hinge. I will then glue the hinges in with polyurethane glue to hold them. Here we have an elevator planed and sanded to form. I put a little filler in places that needed it. When this has been sanded, the elevators are ready for covering. I promised a picture of the rudder trailing edge, and here it is. Pro Skin from Mick Reeves is amazing stuff and makes up a very, very sharp trailing edge. The horizontal stab is now planed and sanded. And here we have all the tail feathers. A little sanding and they are ready for covering in glass fibre. Next week we can start the fuselage.